Hello. So it's about 12 o'clock last night. Right now. Uh, yeah. So it's pretty late and I'm pretty tired. But yeah, I'm just gonna make a spontaneous video talking about an arbitrary topic that I really haven't planned. Um, yeah. So I'm probably just gonna talk. I don't know. Don't know what to talk about. But I feel like making a video. Um, I like thinking about things like. I know someone left a comment on one of my videos, which I got notified about, and I was able to read the first half, but I wasn't able to. When I clicked on the comment, it didn't actually show up on the video, so whether they deleted it or what, I don't know. But if you're watching this and you left a comment saying something along the lines of perhaps you need to stop analysing life so much and just perhaps start living, then yeah, I did read part of that comment, the part that I had access to. Yeah, and I'll sort of I'll go I'll stick on that on this topic for a minute. So to stop analysing life so much and just to live, but I feel like I have to analyse life. I feel like if I go through my whole life without thinking about things on a deeper level or trying to figure things out, I'll be wasting my life. It's just something that I sort of gravitate towards like naturally in whatever situation I'm in, and sometimes it benefits me and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just leads to like um a world of overthinking and it's just like a fruitless endeavour, but other times it does seem beneficial. It's like the thing with philosophy is that there is no, I guess, absolute answers, perhaps, because that's an absolute statement. So by saying there is no absolute answers, that's paradoxical because um, if there is no absolute answers, then that's not an absolute answer to the fact that there is absolute answers. So it's both seems true and not true at the same time. But that's the thing, isn't it? There's you can just keep going around in circles. It's like you put one point forth, but then it's all about arguing another point. But then I guess you got to weigh up which point is more true or more conducive to reality, and that's the one you've got to go with. And I like that. I sometimes like the uncertainty, but sometimes not. Sometimes I feel like I'm trying to find conclusions in an inconclusive world, and my phone's gonna die in a little bit, so I might cut out, and that's why. Yeah, so I feel like I like trying to find conclusions. I like feeling like I understand something, and sometimes I do feel like I understand things, but then it's like life comes back at you, doesn't it? Reality hits you, and it's like, nope, you don't understand this. Yeah, but what I like about philosophy is you can study people's ideas from the past, like, or people's ideas from the present, like credible philosophers and psychologists and scientists and all these different people who have had thoughts and ideas, and you can just look at their ideas and you can get to understand their perspective and perhaps where they were coming from and why they saw things that way. And it's not necessarily that they're saying anything of absolute truth about reality, but it's just that they're putting their point forth based on their own experience, and that's pretty much what we're all doing. And obviously, some perspectives are perhaps more true than others, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't perhaps examine them all. I like figuring things out. I like making connections between the different philosophers, and I like that. I find enjoyment out of it. So when the person commented on my video, I was gonna respond back saying thanks for the advice, but I think I'm gonna have to pass up on that because it's something I enjoy. I feel like they perhaps I know they had good intention, but I feel like perhaps they assumed that a life of analysis is a life wasted, but I don't think that's always the case because I feel like I do live my life. I do things that I enjoy, and I do understand the importance of sometimes just having a quiet mind and really just trying to take in the experience around you. But I also understand the importance of, well, for me anyway, the importance of analysing things and looking at things on that deeper level and just trying to get that understanding of what's going on, even if it is with language. And I've said this before as well. It's my dog making weird noises, by the way. I've said this before as well, that perhaps we can't use language adequately to define experience. We can only go to a certain extent, and beyond that, it's like things get lost in translation, because in us using language, we also have to rely upon the fact that other people understand our language, or perhaps they understand the context that we're trying to portray, or the meaning that we're trying to portray, and that doesn't always happen. And misunderstanding's quite well, it's like if you misunderstand someone, you're misunderstanding what they're trying to portray to you, and it's sort of like a false reality almost. You're picking up on something which isn't actually being portrayed by the person, and that could perhaps shift your perception of that person, or I don't know. It's just, I just can't see misunderstanding as a good thing, unless perhaps someone misunderstands. Perhaps misunderstanding is a good thing sometimes. Like if someone says something and you take it in a different way, but that way sort of sparks something off in you or benefits you in some way, then I guess it could be good. But for the most part, I feel like we need to be able to understand people properly, and in order to do that, we have to use language properly in a way that we're able to convey our experience to people, to avoid as much misunderstanding as possible. Yeah, because if you understand somebody, then I don't know, it just seems good, doesn't it? I feel like it's just something we have to take for granted, the fact that understanding is better than misunderstanding. It's like a positive and a negative. Misunderstanding is clearly perhaps inferior to understanding. I'm trying to think of an example where this wouldn't be the case, but it's not coming to mind. Yeah, so I like thinking about things. I like analysing reality. I also like just experiencing and just like really trying to like just, I guess, sit and just observe and try and take in what's really going on in my environment. But even my longing or wanting to do that is based on some previous analysis I've had, especially on epistemology, which I've been looking into recently, about the objective world being, basically we are unable to experience the objective world because we can only experience the world through our senses, and it's like, it's just sort of like I'm able to I guess implicate's the right word, implicate this little bit of thinking I've been doing into my observation and experience, because it's like I can sit and I can really look at how what my experience of the world is, but then there's also this little bit inside of me where it's like, okay, but this isn't actually what it's like. Perhaps I'm pretty certain this isn't what it's like. This is just how I'm perceiving it. Like if there's not an eye there to see it, or if there's not an ear there to hear it, is it really happening? Because I think there's a quote, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like something to do with the nature of the knower being perhaps more important than the thing being known, or something like that, or the nature of the knower influences the thing being known, and that's basically the nature of what is perceiving the objective world actually influences what the objective world is, or how we perceive the objective world. And yeah, because we can only experience the world through our senses. But then again, I guess that's debatable, because we're still always experiencing the world through our senses. But what about through X-ray machines and thermal cameras and things that seem to go beyond our experience? But then again, we're using machines to be able to pick up on these things that we're unable to pick up on, but they do exist within reality. But then for us to be able to to look at the results of what these machines can do, we're still confined to our senses. So everything's sensory, everything's subjective in that sense. And that was actually a Kantian idea. And I don't know if Kant was the first person, because I know Descartes also did some work on epistemology. But I think Kant took it a lot further, and he's probably done some of the greatest work on it. But the fact that Kant said everything was subjective has really been taken out of context, especially in postmodern society. So today, there's this notion sort of lived on, and it would sort of make Kant turn in his grave. The fact that we've took the idea that everything is subjective and turned it into a way that we can literally live our lives however we want, without restraint. And this is apparent through the non-binary community and people who are completely rejecting gender, rejecting any sort of, I guess, I don't quite know what to call it, any sort of tradition in society or anything like that, and that everything's just written off as a social construct. Gender's a social construct, class is a social construct. Everything's just now a social construct, and that's because everything's subjective and we create our own reality, but that's not necessarily the case. And that's not what Kant was trying to say when he said everything was subjective. I feel like there's a quote out there, and I think it was Jordan Peterson who said this. There's an infinite way of explaining the world, but that doesn't mean that every way is true. And that's true, and that's sort of what the postmodernists go by, the fact that there's an infinite number of ways to interpret the world, and that's exactly what they're doing, but they're not acknowledging that perhaps some ways are better than others, or there's not an infinite way, right ways of interpreting the world. So yeah, so basically Kant said everything is subjective, which is true, but that got taken out of context. And everything is subjective because what Kant meant by subjective was experienced through the mind. Like, we can't experience things in and of themselves. We can only experience things through